Welcome to Behind the Lens. This edition is what we call the Shaggy Dog Showcase. The Shaggy Dog Project is a collective of filmmakers who get together weekly to talk about and make films. My guest this evening is one of the founders of the Shaggy Dog Project, Neal Miller. Welcome, Neal.
Thank you, Tom.
So, one of the things that we've talked about before is the beginning of the Shaggy Dog Project, but perhaps you'd like to give us your remembrance of just how that happened.
Well, we have a mutual friend of ours who kept telling me I have to come down on a Saturday morning. There's this guy, Tom Blank, who is doing this screenwriting class at the DIVA, Downtown Initiative for Visual Arts, and I kept putting it off, and then I decided, after she mentioned it, I think the fourth time, I decided to come down, and I met you, and I was really fascinated by what you were doing. You were trying to help people write screenplays here in town, and I felt a great need for that because most of the films I had seen that were made locally really needed work on their screenplays. And so I ended up coming down and joining you, and then I found out we were very much in sync about screenplay structure and some of the elements of how to write a good screenplay. And so I think there were maybe 5, 6, 7 people in the group, maybe occasionally there were a few more. And there was a lot of really interesting meetings that were on Saturday mornings. And but gradually the difficulties of writing a feature-length screenplay began to take its toll, and people get frustrated, and it's not an easy thing to do. And so the numbers began to dwindle, so there were times when it was you and me and maybe one other person there. And then I suggested to you that perhaps what we might do is try to take these shorter screenplays, might be a little easier to develop, give people that sense of accomplishment, and then they could go on to longer screenplays. And then, you know, if you and I agreed that something was good enough, that let's make the film, you know, short films, you know, 6, 7, 8 minutes, 10 minutes. And you agreed, because it was your show. And so we did that, and the numbers began to grow, and when we finally got our first one that we thought we could greenlight, we were starting to put a production group together, and the idea was that everybody in the class would be part of the production crew, and we would structure it the way your typical Hollywood film is made. You know, department heads, and you know, we have all these bases covered.
Well, we didn't quite have all the bases covered.
We didn't, yeah. But I started calling in some favors. You know, we got Mark Stafford, who's a great videographer, to come in and shoot stuff, and we somebody I knew that did sound, and we begged and borrowed locations from people for like no money. So I then wrote a grant application to the tourism group, which is run, I think, out of the Parks and Recreation Department of all places. And we got a grant for, I think, maybe $6,000. And we ended up using that money to, you know, buy supplies and food for the crew, and a little bit for locations, and some for costumes, and you know, a little here, a little there. But we ended up, and I said I will direct these all 4 of the. Well, we didn't know we were going to do 4. We didn't know how many we were going to get done initially. But we ended up shooting 4 films, and didn't even spend all the money, because we were averaging between $1,000 and $1,500 per film.
I'd like to talk about the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was called
Do the Right Thing.
Do the Right Thing.
Yeah.
And the story involved a woman who...
Well, she goes in to buy a gift for a birthday gift, and I think she ends up breaking something in the store and feels guilty about it. She has some funny incidents that happen in the store while she's dealing with this, and her guilt starts working on her, that she has to tell them that she broke something.
Yeah. So we're going to interrupt this conversation to show a little clip.
Oh, wonderful.
From that,
yeah.
And then we'll come back and talk again.
Yes, wonderful.
At this point, we cut away to film.
Right.
And let's say we watch it to the point where she forgets that she has brought this little statue out to the car without paying for it.
That's right. Oh, right. You're refreshing my memory. Yeah.
Let's go back and say, all right, now she has discovered that she has made a mistake.
Yeah.
Tell us what happens next.
Well, she decides she has to go back in the store and tell them that she accidentally forgot to pay for this. And there's a lot of confusion as a result of this, and I think they decide they really don't want her to pay for anything. I forget the rest of the film.
Well, we'll just have to take another look.
But anyway...
now, this is hold here. We're now in another section of the film.
Yep.
And let's jump to the end and say that they drive away and they've even run over the birthday card that they stopped to buy in the first place.
That's right.
All right. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, yeah, she had gone in there to buy a birthday card, and then she ended up getting the card, and then as they're driving away, she and her girlfriend driving away, and realize we see that she has driven over the birthday card. It had fallen out of her purse or out of her hand or whatever.
It's ironic.
Yeah, and there was it accomplished what we set out to do. It was shot well, and it had humor in it, and everyone got the experience of going from an original idea that one of the members of the class had come up with, and I forget who that was at this point, the member of the class. And we went through all the way to the end, and then I forget, we edited it, and so people got a sense of the whole process from beginning to end.
Well, let's be a little more specific. The first thing we had to do was cast it.
Yeah.
What did you do about getting this show cast?
Yeah, well, I found a woman in town who did a lot of theater casting, and it's been my experience in all of my films that I've made, including all this stuff from PBS, I'll get 1, 2, maybe 3 lead actors out of either New York or LA. I preferred New York. And everyone else was cast from local theater people, actors, who have a lot of theater experience. And I found there's tremendous talent, and it's very true here in Eugene. There's a lot of very talented actors here that just don't have opportunities to do a lot of film work, but they do a lot of theater, and they're very good. And so I found someone who did a lot of casting for theater here, and we did a whole audition thing, very formal, the way normal auditions are held. Bringing people in, having them read lines, videoing what they were doing, and then we would pretty much, as a group, decide on certain actors that we would select and cast.
Now, these actors were not paid.
Nobody was paid. That was one of the things we had to establish, that this was all going to be done pro bono. And everyone was agreeable to doing that because it was, I mean, even locations, occasionally we'd, give like $10 fee for using a location. But most of those things were contributed. The professionals that worked on them and helped us out, they worked for nothing. That's the only reason we could do this, and on the very limited budgets that we had.
Do you have any final thoughts about the process? I mean, that you're no longer with the Shaggy Dog group.
Yeah, I was with it for 3 years, and then I've got several film projects of my own that I'm working on, features, and I decided I was, number one, I had done about as much as I could do, and I got to the point where maybe I was interfering more than I was helping, and so I thought it was time to see if this experiment would work on its own, and it did. It has survived. There's many new people involved with it, and it has become a center for making films.
Including this interview.
This interview, exactly, yes. And so I think the whole experiment was a success because it gave a lot of people the experience that they were looking for. Some people had already made some films, some short videos, and their contributions were very valuable, but they've also drawn on the resources because it became a gathering place for people interested in making videos and film, and that was the purpose. And even though the Downtown Initiative for Visual Arts, DIVA, no longer exists in its form that it did because they lost their facility, it has survived, and it's now, as you say, this is right now this interview is being done with people from Shaggy Dog and the co-founder of it, and so it's become somewhat of a center for filmmaking and people interested in film.
Thank you, Neal. We've been very happy to have you back.
Well, it's always good to see the people involved and to see you and to see how things are progressing, and it's been very nice to see how things have evolved, and they always will evolve. It's one of those things that when you bring new people in, there's new energy, there's new thoughts, and yet it has continued to function.
To this very day.
And the name, of course, the Shaggy, you were the one who said, why don't we call this, well, we were originally talking about maybe doing jokes, video productions of jokes.
Let's start this part again.
Yep.
Let's say that this is a cut, but we're continuing to film. Let me go back and do two separate little conversations that may be interspersed with the use of the film.
Yeah.
Neal, where did the name Shaggy Dog Project come from?
It came from you, Tom. Yes, we were searching for a name, and at one time we had talked about one of the things we might do is maybe we'd do video productions of jokes. And we know from our history there was the thing called the Shaggy Dog joke. Story. Mm-hmm. Which is one that sort of goes on and on and on, never stops, it seems. And you came up with that idea of calling this the Shaggy Dog Project.
And it's gone on and on and on, and it hasn't stopped.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
That was your brainchild.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Now, this is a separate conversation.
Yeah.
We talk about making films, but we're in the age of digital photography.
Yeah.
That our work was initially photographed by a videographer. We're in the area or the age of video production taking over from film, and yet we still use film terms and we use film structure to determine what happens.
Yes.
Do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, well, it's just part of the evolution. Just as, you know, when I first started making films back in the 70s, we were still editing films on flatbed, the old flatbed. I was shooting those in 16 millimeter color for PBS. It was a fairly complex process because you eventually had to end up with a digital master, although in many cases we ended up with screening them off 16 millimeter reels, and one of them, the roommate, we actually shot in 35 millimeter. But the editing was a very difficult process, and I was there at the time when the transition to digital editing took place, and it happened so fast. I mean, it was probably over a 5-year period where suddenly everyone was now, and then once I edited in digital, it was like working on my computer. It just, you could call stuff up, try different things. It was so much easier. And so the same thing has evolved here in the digital video area because it's so much more geared to the way things are. I mean, streaming films is a normal thing today, and that all takes place because of everything shot in digital, and you don't have to go through this laborious process of converting everything from film to digital and then converting back to film. And it's just part of the normal evolution of filmmaking, yeah.
Well, thank you again for being here, and
my pleasure.
Come back anytime.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.